Hey, did you know Microsoft's reboot of Perfect Dark was cancelled? Let's get into the complete story around the game and what went wrong. And with that out of the way, let's get right into it. The first thing I'll say is the easiest way to tell this story is chronologically, even though most of the details I'll cover in this video weren't released until years after everything happened and people who worked on the game shared behind the scenes stories with various outlets. The project was first announced at the 2020 Game Awards with a full CG trailer created by an external agency. The game was going to be developed by The Initiative, which was a newly formed studio under Microsoft, featuring some of the talent behind Red Dead Redemption, the God of War reboot, and the head of the studio would be Daryl Gallagher, who worked on the Tomb Raider reboot. So there was strong talent behind the scenes working on this game, and many developers were already familiar with rebooting legacy IP. The team was given the freedom to choose its project at Microsoft, and the team were the ones who chose to reboot Perfect Dark. As for the trailer itself and the story of the game, we learn we will still follow Joanna Dark, who is seeking the truth around ecological disasters that are happening around the world. These disasters are referred to in-game as the Cascade, which we get a shot of from space in the trailer. We will investigate the corporations who gave the world solutions for these disasters, and most of the game would be set in Cairo, Egypt. The last important piece, and the game was being at least partially developed by Certain Affinity. The studio is known mostly for co-developing projects like the Halo franchise, Doom, and Call of Duty. So they are no stranger to first-person shooter combat and development on large AAA projects, which should have been a great fit since they had co-developed projects in the past with similar gameplay styles. And it was around this time the team was describing the game as quadruple A. They wanted this game to feel like a blockbuster with the best graphics, innovative gameplay, and tech, driven by a strong narrative, which was not reflected with what was actually going down at the studio at the same time. As for what was happening behind the scenes is the team was still trying to nail down the core gameplay loop for the game and how they would balance the spy and action aspects. The team wanted it to feel like James Bond or Mission Impossible, but the studio was having trouble defining that and would keep pitching ideas, prototyping them, and scrapping them. And this would keep repeating to the point where no progress was being made. Part of the problem was the relationship between Certain Affinity and The Initiative. Certain Affinity had worked with other studios in the past, but purely as a support studio. They would build the levels instructed by the studio leading development. With the Perfect Dark development, The Initiative wanted a partner to work on ideas with, and the mismatch in styles of working led to Certain Affinity feeling mistreated by the situation. They wanted The Initiative to have a plan and a strong direction for how to lead the game, and that wasn't working. Moving forward to 2021, The Initiative was hoping to move past the struggles in 2020, and they were able to create a proof of concept for the game. The proof of concept was never shown publicly, but those who did see it described it as a few unfinished and prototype levels, a loose narrative, traversal, combat, and gadgets, and it was a big development milestone for the team and good news for the studio. Unfortunately, the good news didn't last long. Certain Affinity, the co-developer on the project, did not want to renew their contract to continue working on the game after they had just delivered this proof of concept together. And this is when the project really went off the rails. With Certain Affinity no longer supporting, the team actually doing the work at The Initiative also didn't feel confident the game would ever progress. The Initiative lost 35 employees around this time in 2021, including the design director, and this slowed development to a crawl again just when the team had started to make momentum. Xbox leadership had to even visit the studio and reassure everyone that the studio believed in the project and was working on a new co-development partner. Then in September, it was announced The Initiative was bringing in Crystal Dynamics to help with the game's development, which wasn't too big of a surprise considering the studio head was formerly at Crystal Dynamics. It was during this time the team made the decision to pivot to Unreal Engine 5, but Crystal Dynamics started to worry the more they got involved with the project because almost the entire project needed to be reworked and almost nothing the initiative worked on previous to this was able to be salvaged, including the vertical slice created with certain affinity. And members of the team told IGN that 3 years of work was done on the project up to this point, but the team didn't benefit from 3 years of work because most of what was created wasn't usable. That brings us to 2022. The initiative and Crystal Dynamics were partnering on the game, and essentially the project was starting over from scratch in Unreal Engine 5. But pretty early on, it was reported that issues were already happening between the two studios, and Crystal Dynamics taking over some of the leadership roles, and they were taking more ownership of the project, and that caused some conflicts behind the scenes. Because of all the delays, they were on tight deadlines, and Crystal Dynamics hired more staff in hopes to make fast progress on the title. Embracer Group purchased Crystal Dynamics in 2022 as well, but members of the studio at this time didn't feel a difference after the acquisition. It was also reported that the game was being seen as a Crystal Dynamics game more than an initiative game, which is ironic considering the studio was formed with the sole purpose of creating this game. And now we are on to 2023. Matt Booty said he had a full review of Perfect Dark in May, and they were able to continue to build the initiative, which has me believing whatever he saw made him confident enough in the project. But sources said the game was further along than the vertical slice from 2021 with a stronger foundation of what the game was going to be, but the studio was still likely 2 to 3 years away from release. And this was the first mention of the game being episodic instead of a traditional release. So this was another year later. Xbox is still saying they feel confident enough to keep funding it, and it seemed like some progress was being made, but still a ways out from release. These next few years is when the news starts to slow down on the project, which brings us to 2024. In June of 2024, we got the official gameplay trailer from Perfect Dark from the Xbox showcase. We get to see Joanna Dark in action and trying to stop a character named Carrington, and I'll be the first to say the trailer looks awesome. We see Joanna landing in Cairo in Garden City. She has a ton of different gadgets at her disposal in the trailer, like a voice modulator and a vision that made her see enemies and objectives in the area. And the trailer looks great overall. From end to end, we get to see traversal, action, gameplay. It really made fans pretty excited for this title again. The trailer ends with Joanna getting trapped in a room and is ambushed, and at this point she does have a weapon and we get to see a little bit more action. It wasn't until after the fact that journalists from both Kotaku and VentureBeat had both reported that the trailer was not real and almost all fake, and it wasn't a real gameplay trailer. What makes this more interesting is that one of the former level designers, Adam McDonald, said the trailer was in-engine and that he was one of the level designers who worked on the trailer. He said there are some fake aspects to the trailer, but the gameplay systems, parkour, and gadgets are all mostly real. He said someone was controlling the character, and if they would have acted differently, it would have played out differently. So once again, I tend to believe the level designer working on it, especially at that point when he released this statement, he wasn't at the initiative anymore. So why would he lie about it? The trailer maybe was a little bit more real than what it had come off as, but still some of this reporting definitely hurt the game at the time when people just weren't feeling confident after all these years and the team still kind of had nothing to show for it. And the last notable news from 2024 came a few months later. It was reported the former creative director behind Sony's Wolverine game had left to lead the Perfect Dark Reboot. No other details were given about the transition or what this meant for the title. It just sounded like more leadership roles were changing because of this. And finally, we can go to 2025 where the story ends. In July of 2025, it was announced that Microsoft was laying off 9,000 employees and the initiative was being closed. Microsoft explained further, saying this was due to a changing in priorities across the organization and to focus resources to set up their teams for greater success within the changing industry landscape. So what happened next? There was a flurry of reporting around the game. MP First had exclusive concept art and some additional details about another vertical slice the team was working on up until April of 2025, which I will actually come back to that aspect. of the team working on another vertical slice, because that is interesting. But one part of the article, and the community continues to talk about, is the aspect of a season 1. What is a season 1, you might ask, in reference to Perfect Dark? It sounds like the game, based on the rumors we heard earlier and now this reporting, that it was going to be an episodic format instead of a traditional story, which we had heard back in 2023, and this game would be broken up into some seasons, I guess. And I would assume this was due to development slowing and just trying to get something out the door. Even if they couldn't deliver the full game, they could at least get this season 1 slice out. In terms of gameplay, this article from MP First had a few other details: that this game was going to have an adrenaline system, which is how Joanna got her abilities to heal, deal additional damage, or reduce incoming damage. And as I said earlier, a ton of concept art, and even showing an earlier draft of the key art. And the last news about the title comes from The Gamer and Bloomberg. The actress behind Joanna told the publication they had been recording lines for the game throughout 2023 and did performance capture in 2024 and started recording more in 2025. And said she had done entire chapters in this universe, and the team had hit several milestones, but couldn't speak to exactly where they were at in development at the time of cancellation. What's even more interesting is Take-Two had made an offer to keep funding the project instead of Microsoft, but the deal fell through, and the project, if funded, was going to be a slimmed down version of what the team initially wanted and scoped out. Crystal Dynamics would have actually led production on this new title, and leadership from the initiative and Crystal Dynamics were both involved in looking for a new publisher and funding. Bloomberg reported the deal fell through because Take-Two wanted long-term ownership of the Perfect Dark property, which Microsoft and the team weren't willing to give up. So it looks like the team did try everything in shopping this idea around, and it wasn't from lack of interest that studios or publishers weren't interested. It was just trying to find a deal that made sense, Microsoft couldn't find or didn't want to make a deal for. So what are my thoughts on this entire story, and where did the studio go wrong? And this is where I want to talk about vertical slices again. Because back to the Venture Beat journalist who had discussed the trailer being fake, the second part of that same quote mentioned he had heard Crystal Dynamics had been making exciting vertical slices for years with no foundation to move beyond them to create the final game. Which does sound correct to all the reporting I've seen. The team from the start couldn't decide on a vision and clear direction for the game. We know progress was made at points, and vertical slices were being created and shown behind closed doors to Microsoft leadership, which got everyone excited, but nothing ever stuck enough to actually progress development far enough to get it beyond this vertical slice. They couldn't get past that phase after being in development for longer than 5 years. The gameplay trailer they showed looked awesome, and I would have loved to see what that team could have launched if they were given more time for the project, but unfortunately that didn't end up happening, and it makes sense from a Microsoft perspective. They had been funding this very expensive project, pulling in other studios, taking time away from other projects to build something that wasn't hitting milestones, or at least external milestones from what fans were seeing. So it really sucks. I would have loved to see this game. I still hope more comes out about it. Maybe even that gameplay trailer, eventually we'll see more of that information and potentially a playable aspect of it leak if it actually was playable. I'm sure this won't be the last time we see Perfect Dark, and I'm sure at some point a studio will want to bring it back. That's where I'm going to end this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.